Well, as the new practitioner at Circle's Edge, first thing I want to do is recognize how blessed Circle's Edge is, and I personally am, to have these incredible experienced practitioners here to lean on. From my training, I can really value the invocations, the prayers that they do, and I am blown away. They are my greatest aspiration and inspiration, each and every one of them. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
A few weeks ago, I was honored to speak at Unity on a Friday night service, as many others have done and are about to do. And my presentation was on tapping into the healing vibration. And there's three parts that I want to put into this presentation. One is from a purely scientific approach. Second is the natural vibration that we're talking about. And then third, put it into terms of new thought, science of mind. And then I promised Kathy to do a beautiful wrap-up at the end. Many of you probably don't know that I'm an amateur physics buff, so it's kind of natural that I would follow physics and into metaphysics. So, and there's always this healing vibration, and sometimes we hear it, ting, sometimes we don't. During my practitioner studies, one of my required readings was this book by Dr. Lisa Rankin. And for those of you who've already heard this presentation, I apologize. I'll change a word here or there so it'll be all new. Dr. Rankin was clinically trained, all complete scientific approach, and over time she noticed that there was more going on in patients' recovery than she could explain through a scientific approach. So she really began to delve into the power that mental approach has in healing. And she certainly took a scientific approach to it, but I want to read one quote in particular, and I told them in Carson City it was really so I could just impress you that I can read these words. But again, this is very scientific. The book itself is written for laypersons. This is not just for medical personnel. So I would encourage you to read it. And it really did change how I felt about the principles of science of mind treatment. So I'm going to offer this scientific expertise. When the conscious forebrain thinks positive thoughts and feels things like love, connection, intimacy, pleasure, and hope, the hypothalamus stops triggering the stress response. When you feel optimistic and hopeful, loved and supported, in the flow, in your professional or creative life, spiritually nourished or sexually connected to another person, the relaxation response takes the place of the stress response. And you know the power of stress, what it does to the body. The sympathetic nervous system shuts off. Cortisol and adrenaline levels drop. The parasympathetic nervous system takes over. The immune system flips back on, and the body can go about its natural self-repair process, preventing illness and taking its stab at treating disease that already exists. As a result, disease is more likely to be prevented in well people, and disease may even be treated in sick people. Voila! Your thoughts lead to self-healing. The mind has healed the body, and it's not some new age metaphysical thing. It's simple physiology. That's the science. It's not some new age metaphysical thing.
Mumbo jumbo.
Mumbo jumbo, whatever we call it. But I'd say, yes, it is. It's new thought at its best. Ancient wisdom, new thought. It is basic physiology, but this is how spirit works through the body. It's not that it can be separated, but again, the mind has healed the body, and it's not some new age metaphysical thing. It's simple physiology. It's science. Science tells us this is how it works. It doesn't say this is how spirit works, but we'll get to that part at the end. Well, there's one more. I won't read it to you because there aren't enough words to really impress you. But it's physiology of the mood and how it affects the amygdala of the brain. So if that, does somebody, Kate, do you know what the amygdala is?
It's part of your brain.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining.
Yeah.
What did she say?
In detail. Now, Dr. Rankin talks a great deal about the statistics that verify the impacts of the placebo effect. It's amazing. And really, that was what started her exploring the power the mental healing has in it all. Placebo works. Why does it work? Because we have the mind that does all these other things. There's one more scientist I want to quote, and that is Greg Braden. Maybe some of you have read his books. I've seen him lecture twice. Very impressive. He's a New York Times best-selling author, scientist, and lecturer. And this is a quote from Greg Braden. Late in the 20th century, experiments confirmed that we are bathed in a field of energy that connects us all with the events of the world, given names that range from the quantum hologram to the mind of God. Research has shown that through this energy, the beliefs and prayers within us are carried into the world around us. Both science and ancient tradition suggest the very same thing. We must embody in our lives the very conditions that we wish to experience in our world. So that's the end of the quote. So both these scientists, Dr. Rankin, Greg Braden, tell us basically the same information. Our bodies are pre-programmed through our DNA, through our chemistry, our electrochemistry systems, to be self-healing. When we remove the negative thoughts that create these illnesses, we are self-healing. And it's not New Age metaphysical stuff. It's basic physiology. Well, I would say it's very consistent with new thought, ancient wisdom. I retired from the power company, 30 years. I'm not an electrical expert, but I can tell you certain things about electricity. When you interrupt its natural flow, problems can occur. And if you don't believe me, watch an electric welder sometime. Molten metal literally coming together. It becomes stronger when used appropriately, but electrical explosions are no joke. When we interrupt the electrical flow of our bodies through our minds, disease, illness, traumatic accidents, bad things can happen. The ancient ones who came many millennia ago didn't know how the physiology of the body worked. They weren't Dr. Rankin, but they did know it worked. And I would suggest to you that the reason they know it worked is because they were so carefully aligned with Mother Nature, with the natural vibrations of the earth itself, of the cosmos. They knew and understood there is a vibration to life, and they were very carefully aligned with it, and they knew how to align with it. So speaking of vibrations, here's a question. When a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yeah.
I don't remember the answer to that, basic physicist or not. But it talks about the vibration and then the interpretation of the vibration through our eardrums. And as long as we're talking about drums, Native Americans used drums all the time. They made their basic instruments from whatever was available. You've all heard the expression, music calms the savage beast, right? For scientific proof of that, I would suggest you think about a 2-year-old acting up and how quickly they can go from a holy terror to an amazing little angel by just playing the music from the movie Barney. That's scientific. Holy terror, angel. The only difference is music. And we have a grandson, 15 months old. Music stops him dead in his tracks. And then he's dancing because he's in tune with that natural vibration. There's so many, many benefits to music. We saw a documentary on Netflix where a doctor was treating Alzheimer patients with music from their era when they were young persons. And there were people who were non-ambulatory, non-responsive, and within minutes of hearing music from their era, whether it was big band or early rock and roll or Elvis, they were out of their wheelchairs dancing. Some who were basically being written off were able to live alone and go back to a life of independence through the treatment of music. And there's got to be something more to it. Native Americans used music for ceremony, for healing, and they would have drums, whistles, flutes. I was in the Amazon jungle, and I saw the natives there using all kinds of things. They had giant drums made from hollowed out logs, and the striker, the drumstick, was a wooden stick with a rubber mallet, because they had access to natural rubber. It was amazing. And when we landed at one place, the village was back in a mile off the river, and they had a drum there. And the shaman said, "Oh yeah, you must beat the drum. And if they respond, come visit the village. If they don't, it's time to leave." Okay, so it was communications. So it's ceremony, healing, communications, all sorts of things. Music by itself can be healing. And I would suggest to you that the reason is there's a natural vibration. And it helps us remember that we are part of Mother Earth. We are part of the natural process. It helps us let go of fears, concerns, stress. I mean, it's basic physiology. Let go of stress, your body's going to heal itself. How do you let go of stress? You can meditate. You can meditate to music. I mean, we use music in all these ways. People have waterfalls in their homes to meditate to. What's that all about? Is it the water, or is it the vibration that it gives off? That soothing sound that helps us remember who we are, and that we are one with Mother Nature and the entire planet's natural vibration. I know, living in the country, I hear sounds that are soothing to me. The coyote's song. I can wake up in the middle of the night, hear the coyotes singing, and it relaxes me, puts me back to sleep. Take a city person, that might put them on edge. But if you put me in the city with all the city now sounds, it's going to take me a few weeks to relax into it. But the city people who were born and raised with it, they go, oh, the natural rhythms of the city, and it helps them relax. So it can be learned, but it's still an identification with that rhythm, with that vibration. And how does new thought bring all that in? Many of you have been in class, most of you are in class with some amazing teachers. In 1904, Judge Thomas Troward gave us the Edinburgh Lectures, and he laid out the principle that we are all united in spirit. Spirit is whole and complete and perfect everywhere. That's the basic fundamental for our entire teaching. We are one. We are united. We are whole. He said, pure spirit is present in its entirety at every point simultaneously. And he had, back in 1904, he had a chapter dedicated to healing. On page 138 of the Edinburgh Lectures, which I know everyone will probably go read this afternoon, the basic concept of mental healing is this. Since the divine can't change its inherent nature, it must operate in the same manner in me, consequently in my own spiritual world, of which I am the center. Center with an R-E instead of E-R. Drives me nuts. These principles really were the beginning of the foundation of New Thought. There were others who really applied it. Notably, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby was one of the great healers of that time. And he had taken the thoughts of Troward, taken it a step further and applied it. And people he personally healed became the founders of New Thought. Emma Curtis Hopkins, known as the teacher of teachers. She taught our beloved Ernest Holmes. He was one of her last students. Thank God she took him on, because we have that teaching as the blessing and the creation, the foundation of what we're all about. From our Foundations class lesson plan, and I apologize to those of you who sat in class last week, but it bears repeating. It's good stuff. New Thought acknowledges the oneness of God and the individual by understanding the individual's true identity is in God, and God is all the individual truly is. We affirm that human experience derives from the individual's own sphere of thought and feeling, with consequences for all areas of life, such as health, expression, happiness, wealth, and companionship. It encompasses the concept that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe governed by the spiritual law, empowered to shape and mold our experience for good or not, in all things, under all circumstances. This we do by working with spiritual law, which is cooperation with divine causation, working always from mind within to result without. By knowing the truth, that makes us free. We realize the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. End quote. That spiritual law, when we give a treatment, and each one of us does treatments, whether we know it or not, we release our word into the law. That's what they're talking about. That universal law. There are no vacuums. When we correct our thinking, we replace it with positive thought. That goes into the law, and the law must respond as we believe. So we know know from Dr. Holmes there are two kinds of prayer, affirmative and scientific. Affirmative is not begging God. We don't make deals with God. It's recognition that God is all there is. There's nowhere that God is not. We're all spiritual beings united, whole, in God, right here, right now. Our scientific prayer is knowledge that the universe is wholeness, that we express. We have that ability through the law to make conscious, positive, or not, thoughts and beliefs. And that the law must give it back in the same measure in which we dwell upon it, think upon it, believe it. So, for Kathleen, let me try to wrap all this up into a nice package for you. Science tells us the basic physiology of healing, that there's a huge mental impact. Our mental process can overwhelm the body with positive or negative. Stress, no one here needs to hear about stress, but how we release stress and let go, and let God, is part of the spiritual mind teaching. That's the new thought that comes into it. And because we all are natural earthlings at this point, most of our consciousness is right here, right now, part of the natural earth. This vibration is already in us. When we meditate, when we sit still and listen, we feel that vibration. We know that vibration. We know that spirit is alive and well and expressing itself as each one of us. And what a beautiful thought. What a beautiful presence spirit is here today. Okay, for a moment now, I'm channeling Reverend Rebecca, and I'm close to tears. New thought leaders really got back to ancient wisdom. Those who lived closest to nature never lost this. But I'll tell you, there are Native Americans who have lost touch with nature. They live in a white man's world, isolated from nature, and they've lost the feel. And their shamans are working hard to get it back. There's a book, Black Elk Speaks. He basically predicted all this and said Native Americans, and he didn't say when, but he said Native Americans would lose their way, and they would rely upon white men to help them find their way back. Black Elk Speaks, one of the most powerful books I've ever read. I cannot recommend it more highly. It's amazing. And to me, now this is my thought on putting together Black Elk Speaks, science, natural vibrations, and new thought. To me, new thought is what is going to help Native Americans who have lost that identification with the natural vibration find their way back. And I'm going to accept that as my mission to help whoever I contact find their way back to their natural wholeness with the universe. Namaste. Is that a better wrap up there, Ken? Okay, thank you. Now I would ask the practitioners to surround us and hold us in our natural vibration that they've all been trained and so lovingly do. I'll take my stab at giving you a prayer. Mother, Father, Spirit, creator of all that is, I'm so, so grateful to be blessed to participate in this sacred space right here, right now, known as Circle's Edge. I'm grateful that this teaching is aligned with the natural universe, and it brings us into harmony, into wholeness, and it manifests as us in this incredible personification of beauty and joy and natural health. And that as we relax into this teaching and know that we are one with the universe as spirit, that spirit cannot help but create the beauty and joy and abundance and beautiful, perfect, healthy, loving relationships that we all experience and are in every day. I'm overwhelmed with the joy, the radiance that is manifested here as each individual that walks in this door. And I'm so grateful to participate in this, to experience this love that Spirit is and creates and manifests as each and every one of us. And with this great joy, I release my word to the universal law, knowing it must respond, and it is already done. And together we say, and so it is.